Hello, welcome. My name is Roni Rufian, one of the career engagement educators, Assistant Director of Physical Sciences and USP. Welcome everyone to our wonderful program this evening. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to have our amazing panelists join us this evening. We're going to do a very quick, about 5 to 10 minute Career Center overview for those of you who have not used our services before, and then I'm going to move forward and moderate the panel so you guys have an opportunity to connect with our panelists. Towards the end of the session tonight at about 5 to 5:30, you guys will all have access to go into individual breakout rooms and connect with the panelists on your own, and you can pick and choose. So we definitely encourage you guys to pop into each breakout room and get to know each of our panelists. I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat, but it'll be a little bit challenging as I'm going through the presentation. Christina, my colleague, is here to help as well. Feel free to leave your questions also to the end of the panel if you like, or put it in the chat and then we can revisit it, but I will leave some time for Q&A towards the end before we get into networking. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Sometimes my laptop's, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through some of our Career Center resources. As you guys know, we're here for your, your journey and wherever your career journey takes you. So no matter if you're, in a major, in a STEM major, and you're not sure what it is you want to do, or you have an idea, but you need some kind of direction and not sure how to, move forward with that direction, we're here to help you guys out. We definitely work with students in trying to help them obtain internships and jobs. If you're thinking about graduate school, pre-professional school, master's, PhD programs, we do advising in all those areas as well. So feel free to come and visit us. There's a couple ways for you all to come and set up an appointment session. As we are going back to campus next week, our appointments will still be virtual, just for the first week until everybody just gets settled in. But we do have 30-minute one-on-one appointments, which you can sign up for through Handshake. And those are longer sessions where you can have the discussion of, like, I'm not sure what it is I want to do with my major, or have an idea of what I want to do with my major, but not sure what direction to go into. Again, for next week, those are still going to be virtual, but we will be posting in person as well for those appointments. So if you want to come back to campus and see us in person, you'll have that opportunity. We also have our 15-minute drop-in sessions, which are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Those are 15-minute sessions. Those are also virtual next week, and we're going to be transitioning it into a more hybrid schedule, hopefully the following week. And that way you will have the option to do both. Also be able to come see us in person for those 15 minutes, or to do it virtually if you prefer. As you can see, or if you're aware, we have tons of events and workshops on our Handshake account. If you go onto your Handshake account, click on events, you'll see the variety of workshops and opportunities and internships and events that are happening throughout the year. A lot of our programming, I think, will still stay virtual. And the plus side to that is we are recording our programming. So all of our programs are going to be and are on our Career Center YouTube channel. So you guys can take advantage of those and be able to watch programs that maybe you weren't able to attend. Also, employer info sessions. There's tons of employer info sessions posted on Handshake. So you're more than welcome to join those. Campus recruiting, on-campus recruiting, it's still happening. Our fairs are virtual. So companies are posting positions on Handshake. They are coming to our virtual fairs, so you have the opportunity to connect with them and so on. So take a look at all of our on-campus opportunities that are posted. And then on our website, we do have articles and digital resources and so on. So feel free to take a look at those as well. As most of you, I'm hoping, are familiar with Handshake. Handshake is our one-stop everything Career Center related. So feel free to log in there. One recommendation I would make for you all on your Handshake account is make sure that you fill out your profile as much as you can, or completely. That definitely helps in helping you identify internships and jobs that companies are posting. It'll show up on your homepage. Once your profile is a bit more, as your profile is more detailed, you'll get to see more opportunities as it pertains to your interest and so on. So I would definitely try and fill out your profile as much as possible. One of our other wonderful resources is Vmock. So one way that students can get their resume critique is definitely through our drop-in sessions, but you can also run it through the system called Vmock, which is under our resources in Handshake. Vmock is an online platform which will help you in creating strong bullet points, strong action verbs. It's definitely a really good resource that our students like to use to make sure that their resume looks polished and professional. So we usually recommend students, come and see us during a drop-in session, talk to us or our career peers, get some advice and feedback. And then when you go back and revise it, you can also run it through Vmock as well to get additional feedback if you like. So take advantage of that. It's free for UCLA students through Handshake. So definitely, I would say take advantage of it while you're a student here. Our additional resources. So we have a bunch of other online resources that I want to bring your attention to. A lot of these resources, again, not actually all of them are through Handshake. So you definitely want to access it through your Handshake account so you don't have to pay for it. Firsthand is an amazing website in which it allows you to learn and gain information about different industries. They have different career guides and so on there. So it's really helpful in getting to learn firsthand what some of these positions and industries are. Interview Stream is an amazing database. It's a mock interview database where you can actually go on there and record yourself. We have a database or a bank of interview questions for different industries, for applying to grad school, for grad school interviews, and so on. So that's also another great resource that I really like students, or I direct my students to be able to learn and practice mock interviews as well. Alumni Services, I want to go through our Alumni Services. So those of you who are graduating this year or have graduated maybe in the fall or graduating in winter have a better idea. You have access to meet with a career counselor up to 3 months after you graduate. So if you are graduating in June, you have access to work with us throughout the summer until the end of September and so on. As far as Handshake, you actually have access to Handshake up to a year after you graduate. So you can definitely participate in our, virtual fairs and so on, career fairs on Handshake. You can definitely use it to search for jobs and full-time opportunities and so on. But just kind of be aware of your resources because unfortunately, after 3 months, after you graduate, you won't have access to a counselor once it's past those 3 months. So that I like to always bring that to our students' attention. Thank you. So that's the end of the Career Center overview. Are there any questions? And feel free to shout out, unmute yourself if you do have a question. I'm just going to quickly check the chat. Thank you, Christina. She put in a lot of the information as far as our YouTube channel, our drop-ins, and so on. So all the links are in the chat for you guys. Are there any questions from the audience before we get started with our panel? Great. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our panel. Our panel is ready to go. I'm going to bring up, so I'm going to keep this slide up just for a few minutes so that students can see who our panelists are this evening. And then once the panelists have an opportunity to introduce themselves, then I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So we can go ahead and get started if the panelists are ready. And I am going to actually start with Harold because you are the first on my screen up here. So Harold, you can go ahead and introduce yourself. So a quick, brief introduction, please. Your education. So if you can kind of talk about, advanced degrees and your major in undergrad, that would be great. And then quickly, like a little background about your work history, your current title, and your current position.
Sure, yes. My name is Harold Tan. I graduated from UCLA in 2004 with a Bachelor's of Science in Cognitive Science and a minor in mathematics. I studied at Anderson for entrepreneurship, and I also pursued a graduate degree at Harvard in information systems. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started, founded, and grown 2 multi-million-dollar e-commerce companies, and I'm now a co-founder of Gigawatt, which is a solar company I've exited and sold my prior companies.
Great, thank you very much. Christine, you're next on my screen.
Hello, my name is Christine, and I am currently or let me give you my educational background. So I graduated from UCLA just a couple of years ago in 2020 when the pandemic started. I got my bachelor's of science in computational and systems biology with a concentration in neurosystems and a minor in entrepreneurship, studying entrepreneurship at Anderson, just like Harold. I'm currently a healthcare consultant at CloudMed, and I am also a co-founder slash COO slash product manager at an ed tech startup. So like Harold, I'm also dabbling in entrepreneurship and sort of like past.
If you guys can mute yourselves, please. Thank you.
So past smaller jobs I did, I guess I did an internship at Janssen, and I was a neurobiology researcher. I've also been a head LA at UCLA, as well as a gymnastics coach. So that's me.
Thank you very much. Jennifer, welcome.
Hi. I actually go by JJ, but Jennifer is my legal name, so it works too. But if you find me on LinkedIn, it's under JJ, not Jennifer. I graduated from UCLA in 2013. I also studied computational and systems biology, but back then they had no concentration, so I just studied that. And I think there were 5 people in my major, so very curious to see how that's grown since then. I went to get my graduate degree from Columbia University in clinical trials, so biostatistics in clinical trials. And currently I work at L'Oreal for our incubator, our technology incubator. And I'll get into that a little bit, but I manage a team of hardware engineers, software engineers, chemists to develop cosmetics of the future. And I also dabbled in some entrepreneurship. During the pandemic, I started a nonprofit and we we worked with UCLA, we ran workshops across the nation. We got to partner with Google and AppDynamics and a bunch of Fortune 500 companies to distribute 11,000 masks across the US for those in need. So that was really cool. We had some cool features in like Forbes and WWD. So that was my fun stint in entrepreneurship, but more nonprofit focused.
Great, thank you so much. And last but not least, Derek.
Hey everyone, I'm Derek Lee. I graduated from UCLA in 2012. My major was in neuroscience, and I was definitely on the pre-med track, and then decided to take a right turn. So happy to talk more about why I made that decision for myself. I really liked the intersection of healthcare and business. And so I got my MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, which is a part of Northwestern. Graduated in 2018. Afterwards, I did a couple of years in strategy consulting at Bain & Company. So can talk about that experience as well. And then I currently am a director of revenue strategy and operations at DaVita, which is a kidney care company. I focus a lot on thinking about patient education, thinking about how to retain and attract patients, and how all of that is kind of intersecting with regulatory changes that exist in the healthcare landscape, and then kind of thinking what like the next frontier is for how we continue to grow in the healthcare and kidney care space. Value-based care, for those of you who are familiar with that term, is really popular in healthcare. And so I think a lot about how we can deliver better health outcomes for lower costs for our patients. So that's another area that I focus on right now.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to stop share at this point so we can kind of see everyone on the screen. Perfect. All right. So I do have a list of questions that I want to go through with the panelists, and then we can, again, like I said, open the panel open discussion for Q&A towards the end of the panel. My next question for the panelists is, what made you decide or choose the life science major that you chose at UCLA? One of the main goals of this program is for, life science and physical science, engineering and math students to realize that there are other options besides maybe tying their major specifically to an industry, maybe tying it into business, as many of you are entrepreneurs and are in that direction. So thinking back, was there a reason why you chose your particular science major as an undergrad student? And what was the reasoning behind that? And the question will lead into the next question. And we can start with Harold, if that's okay, because again, you're next on my screen.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just personally fascinated by the nature of reality, how our world works. And so I thought I just wanted to study as much science as I could. And I pretty much took as many credits as I could at UCLA till they kicked me out because I maxed out everything. They said, you got to graduate, you can't be a Van Wilder here.
Thank you. Derek, you're next on my screen right now.
Yeah, so I alluded to this. I was pre-med, which explains the life science major. I think there are probably a lot of you who are in the life sciences that are kind of deciding whether or not you want to pursue medicine or business, which is why you're in this this webinar. I think for me, it was a lot less like business wasn't even really on my radar when I had decided what major I wanted to be in, but I think has served me really well. One of the things that you'll find at a lot of organizations is business and strategies kind of centers around the idea of solving problems and looking for opportunities. And a lot of companies, consulting firms do that through a hypothesis-driven approach. And so the general mentality of like having a idea of what you think might be causing the particular issue that you're trying to solve for, or what the opportunity is, and then coming up with a way of testing that. I think that logic is very applicable even outside of the sciences. And so I think that's probably the thing that has been most transferable from my time at UCLA to the career that I have now.
Great, thank you. Jennifer?
Yeah, sorry, point of clarification. Do you want us to answer 2 and 3?
So you can, yes.
Okay.
You could go ahead and tie it. I mean, that would actually be perfect. Derek, thank you for expanding on that. So yeah, what made you choose your major in undergrad? And let's discuss a little bit about transferable skills and how your major for undergrad plays a role or has played a role in your career path.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have an unconventional background for someone that works in cosmetics. When I first went to UCLA, I didn't know what I was going to study, honestly. I loved fashion, I loved beauty, but at the same time, I felt like I excelled more in sciences and in mathematics. And so I wanted to like challenge my brain and stretch it. And so I wanted to take as many technical courses as I could, but also kind of keeping the door open for like writing and marketing and designing. And so I was really in between North and South Campus. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did a bunch of GEs in the beginning just so that I could make a decision. But at the end of the day, I think what really struck a chord with me was I attended a workshop for computational systems biology because they were trying to recruit people into the program. And they basically talked about people who loved biological sciences and physics and math, and those were the classes that I happened to be doing well in. And so I attended, and they talked a lot about bioinformatics and genetics, and that really excited me. And so I kind of went headfirst in that direction. And so I graduated with that degree, but at the same time, I still had enthusiasm for the beauty world and for the fashion world. And so I went heavily into product development. Sorry, 2 seconds. Sorry, I'm in New York, so it's dinner time here. So our household is also eating. So I just had to figure out the situation really quick. But I think where my skills are really transferable is after I went into beauty and fashion, where the industry is going, they're super into technology and how they can use it in user experience journeys, whether that's connecting with their consumers, or especially in beauty, how we can increase benefits. So for example, when you think of skincare, maybe you think of formula, but one way to kind of enhance long-term claims and how to really kind of restore skin health is through technology. And so they were looking for engineers with technical backgrounds to either help run clinical trials and studies, as well as manage engineers. And so at the end of the day, I actually ended up using a lot of my technical skills in my day-to-day work, which was really cool. We do a bunch of clinical trials, especially in skincare. And that really tied into the work that I did at UCLA and in my graduate degree.
Thank you so much. Christine?
That is super interesting, Jennifer. I was hooked the second you started talking. For me, like Derek, I kind of started in thinking I was going to be pre-med. I came in, I was accepted as a biology major. And then, when you sign up for orientation, they're like, choose your major. And then I saw one that was computational and systems biology. I was like, oh, well, that looks like computer science plus bio. Computer science is pretty big right now. So why don't I like a combo of both? So I registered for that. And then I found out that the program was really, really, really interdisciplinary across basically all of the STEM sciences that you could possibly do. You have chem, bio, physics, engineering, comp sci, all of that, biochem, OChem, all that kind of stuff. So then me being the indecisive person that I am was like, well, why don't I just dabble in all of this and see where it ends up? And what ended up happening is that it wasn't just individual subjects that you learn about. It ended up being really cohesive in that you got what is that word called? When you combine two things, you get something greater than the sum of its parts, like convergence, synergistic convergence. That's basically what happened for me. And then I was also able to take business classes in Anderson. So then that also gave me the business side of things. So then the job that I'm currently in right now is healthcare consulting, which is the perfect conglomeration of all bio healthcare stuff I've learned through neuroscience, and then all the business stuff that I learned in Anderson. You combine those together, you get healthcare consulting. So that's where I am right now.
Thank you very much. Harold, I also
it's
wanted
recorded. Oh,
Can you guys please unmute yourselves, please? Thank you. Harold, I wanted to also give you the opportunity to expand on that question as well. So if you can also discuss a little bit about transferable skills and looking back, how did your undergraduate degree help you with where you are today?
Yeah, I don't think there were any direct transferable skills. It was mainly, I think, the rigor of the courses and the discipline and perhaps the analytical thinking that was developed that has aided me in future professional work.
Great, thank you very much. All right, my next question, just so students have a better idea of what your day-to-day is, what is a typical workday? If you have a typical workday, what does that look like? Just so they have a better idea of, what you do as a healthcare consultant or as your own company or working with DaVita and so on. What does that look like? And we could start with whomever would like to start this question or answer this question.
I can just hop in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my day-to-day changes on a fairly regular basis since I don't have a very specific role, but it deals a lot with managing people and developing processes and systems and developing the team around me that can really build and grow the company. And a lot of that comes down to understanding macro environments within the company, where the bottlenecks are and what needs to be done to alleviate those bottlenecks.
Thank you. Derek, I see you unmuted, so I'm gonna have to go next.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. I think you'll probably hear this from most of us. Like, kind of a day in the life is hard to pinpoint because things look very different on a day-to-day basis. But I think there are some general themes that are probably true for me. I lead a team, and so definitely a good portion of my time is focused on spending time with the folks that I'm leading and helping grow and develop them and make sure that they're getting the support that they need to be successful. I would say the second kind of macro area that I focus on is related to the projects that I am specifically driving, oftentimes with like a project team. And so that could be going over the latest data that we have and the analysis that we've conducted on that, that's going to drive insights and help us come up with what our path forward will be to kind of take advantage of a particular opportunity that we've identified. And then maybe the third major bucket is a lot of cross-functional work. I work with a lot. DaVita is a fairly large organization, right? We're like 60,000 people. And so I work with a lot of different teams within our organization, and that just requires a lot of meetings. And so my day oftentimes is on Zoom calls, working with other teams, trying to understand what they're working on and making sure that we're all aligned and moving in the same direction.
Great, thank you. Jennifer or Christine?
Yeah, I can go. So I am, in many ways, I manage people, but I also manage projects. And so from a people front, I meet with my engineers and chemists and hear some of their pain points. And I'm like the direct communication linked to management. So if they need more resources to help them perform their technical tasks, or if they need more money, I'm the one who communicates to management to help allocate these resources for our team and kind of explain why our project needs to be prioritized for these technical leads in their different sectors. I will say, because I'm also the product lead though, I can also use some of my expertise in clinical trials or even some of my background in biology and chemistry to kind of check in on the technical teams, offer solutions if they are at a roadblock of what I've experienced in the past when I did do some more executional technical work. But overall, I think as you like grow in your career, and if you choose to become more of a people manager, more of my days end up being more managing people and time and making sure that people have what they need, the project is on time, and we're able to deliver when we say we will, the quality and in the time range that we specify.
For me, I always had this question whenever I did these panels. I wanted to be like, what exactly do you do in the day-to-day? I know what I do as a student, but I don't know what people who work in the industry do. Like, I see them go to work at 9, leave at 5. What happens in between? So for me, for example, today, the first thing I had at work today was a stand-up meeting. We started implementing these daily like check-ins between our managers. Sometimes our principal will join as well. And then with the rest of our project team, which includes the senior and then like your experienced consultants and then your consultants. So you'll have stand-up meetings and we'll check in terms of progress. Today was great because we met our goals. And then next, you'll have some time for me today. I had some time for individual work. And then I had a couple of client meetings where we presented our progress and inflows. And then I also spent a lot of my time actually answering questions and training other consultants. And I also collaborated and managed one of our internal teams today. They had several questions for me as well. That's what it was like for me today in terms of healthcare consulting. And then after this, I'm going to be working on the startup in terms of the product development process. So for that one looks completely different day to day. But what happens for the most part is that I'm managing the product development process and our partners, and I develop operation timelines and checklists for release. And I directly communicate and manage the day-to-day of our workflows and the metrics of the vendor team that I am working with to develop our product. I'm also ensuring quality of all the materials that we create before we launch them to any external stakeholders, including customers and including our vendors. So that's just a long list of stuff.
Thank you very much. My next question is, and we can combine it with the following. What do you find most challenging within your position? What do you find most rewarding? And within the last 2 to 3 years, with work just looking a lot different with remote work and so on, where do you see your particular industry or position going? Have you seen changes, obviously, within the last 2 years? Do you foresee any changes? So any of those topics would be great. And we can start with anyone who'd like to take this first.
I can just go again. Some things that I find most rewarding that I can say is training. When you're training new consultants, you're really leading them from the beginning. They're like babies, and then you watch them grow, you let them grow. Depending on your training style, you adapt to their learning process, and then you just watch them flourish into this amazing consultant that's just generating so much revenue and progress for the company. So that is super rewarding in my opinion. And then also rewarding is when you end up exceeding expectations, because we always have monthly goals. To exceed those expectations, as well as when obstacles are coming in your way. Like, for example, our team just recently acquired 2 new consultants. So we've been spending a lot of time training them, which takes away from the time we have to be able to meet those goals and find identifications. So being able to meet goals in a month like that, or in a month like December, where everyone's on PTO, for example, December, our senior was out for 3 weeks. So basically the whole month. And we were still able to meet and exceed goals, which I think our principal and manager were very impressed with. So that was a win. Those kind of things are rewarding, as well as being able to solve technical issues that arise. Our company, we use SQL and Excel a lot. Those things break all the time, depending on how the SQL is written. So being able to hop in and figure out what the person who created it was thinking and what they were doing, what the last person did, that actually what caused the breakage, and then being able to fix it as well, and then seeing it like finally run again is amazing. As well as also being able to automate processes to be more efficient. For example, processes that would be really time consuming and really tedious. And then if you're able to find a way to like code something using SQL to make something a lot more efficient, that's also super, super rewarding. Challenges are along the same lines. Training is also probably one of the biggest challenges in my opinion, because you really have to, if someone isn't picking stuff up, that can be frustrating, but you just need to have empathy and be able to adapt to their learning style and be sympathetic to what may be happening at home, external factors that they have no control over. So things like that.
I can go next.
Thank you.
So I'll kind of answer it from 2 different perspectives. From my perspective as a product leader or a product manager, and then also like what our industry, I guess, is kind of our department, what we find most challenging and rewarding. So from an industry or a department point of view, I think one of the hardest things as a consumer goods company and as a consumer device group is like, can you develop something that is actually like going to be useful or utilitarian for the user? There's a bunch of consumer devices out there that are junk, especially in the beauty world. And so it's really hard for us sometimes to really isolate a consumer pain point and develop something that is going to be worthwhile. And the other thing is, if you end up going into consumer devices, because you guys are a very technical group, margins are really difficult. So like, can you develop with the technology and the resources that you have, something that is in beauty tech, we have normally, we're used to really awesome margins, but when you add a whole bunch of technology to it, you think about like microchips and boards and all that stuff, you end up narrowing your margins. So it's really hard to develop something like that. I think what's really rewarding from our group is we get to play around and develop things that have never been done before. You can look up our group online. You can see the cool things we've done. We've developed a foundation made on demand where you can scan your face, pull RGB values, and then we'll develop the foundation on the spot. We've done a cool startup, which I actually led, called Color & Co. And it's personalized hair color delivered on demand. And we developed a user interface where you can FaceTime hair colorists, pass along swatches, which is actually really difficult to develop that technology. And then we also created a really cool algorithm where you answer all these questions, you get your ideal hair color, hair colorant that you need. Because if I want to go blonde versus, I don't know, someone who is darker brunette wants to go blonde, it's so different. And so it's nice to have kind of like a computer tell you exactly what you need. I would say from a product lead or like a product manager point of view, one of the challenging things is, I mean, I do have a technical degree, but I work with so many people in different fields. So chemists, data scientists, marketers who are leaders in their own right, in their own categories. And as a product lead, sometimes I feel like it's imposter syndrome, which I'm sure many of you guys can relate to. And so you end up kind of like up managing people and also trying to keep people's morale up and make sure that they can trust you, even though you don't necessarily have the technical expertise in every single area. So that can be really hard when you're looking into roles like product management. But the most rewarding thing about that is you get to interact with some of the smartest people in their fields, and you get to see everything. You have your hands on everything. It's almost as if you had your own little startup. What's cool is I work for a Fortune 500 company, an incubator within that. So they have big pockets. I can play with millions and millions of dollars, and not necessarily, it's not my own. So that's kind of a fun part of working within an incubator, within a big company. If you want to dabble in entrepreneurship, it's like that half step to do that. And you can kind of see like everyone is doing in all the different departments to help build that product end to end. The second part of the question is, what is the second part? Oh, where do I see the industry going in the next 5 years?
Where do you see the industry going? Have there been any changes, obvious changes due to COVID, remote work?
COVID affected all of our professional services. No one wanted to go into the salon to get their hair color dyed. So a lot of people started dyeing their hair at home, which ended up being really beneficial for our group for Color & Co. because it kind of helps you walk through the process of color selection and then how to dye your hair at home. And a lot of the technology that we're developing now is really, I use the word omni-channel. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's like when you go to a brick and mortar store, that's one user journey to buy something, or you can go online and buy something online. Omni-channel is kind of melding both of those worlds and creating an environment where you can maybe search for something digitally, buy it in store, or you can see something in store, but then buy it online. It's more of like a seamless experience between those two worlds. So we're developing a lot of things like that, where you can have these consumer touch points online or offline, and you can get to know the brand or buy things easier. An example of that is also AR try-on, right? Virtual try-on for lipstick shades or whatnot. I think skincare too, what's really interesting is we're getting more and more medicinal. Everyone wants to look young forever. And so that requires a lot of clinical trial testing and flirting the line between FDA approval and what's not. In the cosmetic world, you don't technically need FDA approval. However, if you make strong anti-aging claims, you do. So that's really interesting for me as a clinical trial data person. I think that's really fun to kind of play in that world more.
Thank you for that. Derek or Harold?
Yeah, I'll maybe answer this question from a slightly different angle. If I think about like what gets me up in the morning, for me, it's like I really enjoy working for a healthcare company. I enjoy knowing that the work that I'm doing is like its goal is to help improve the lives of like some of the sickest patients out there. Like that gives me a lot of fulfillment. And I like my specific job because it gives me a lot of variety. I get bored pretty easily, and so I like that I have a lot of different projects that require me to use different skill sets. But I think that like really the answer for anyone is trying to figure out like what is the thing or group of things that you need in your role or kind of like your career path in order to be happy. And you're not always going to know that as a college student. Like sometimes that takes a few at bats for you to like work at a particular company or do your own thing and realize whether or not that's for you. And you take in all this data and then adjust as you continue on your career path. And so I guess like as you think about trying to figure out what career to take, like use the data that you have based on internships, based on extracurriculars that you've been a part of, like that can give you a lot of good insight in terms of like what you'll find rewarding. And then ask those types of questions in interviews to see if they might have aspects of that in the role that you're applying for. And you might be completely off base, right? You might start a job and say, I hate this, and that's good information for you to take for your next role. But like, I think that's kind of served me well, is just constantly taking every opportunity to really think about what are the things that I like about what I'm doing and what are the things that I don't like about what I'm doing. And then in terms of like impact of COVID, I think for the healthcare space, it's pretty obvious. But in general, I think it's really interesting to think about what are the impacts that COVID has had that we believe are temporary versus what are the impacts that COVID has had that are going to be longer lasting, right? Like actual changes in consumer behavior or actual changes in the way that systems and processes work. For example, in the healthcare space, telemedicine is, in my opinion, something that's not going to revert back after COVID goes away or is significantly less present, because people have kind of gone over the hump of like that being a problem, like that being a mental barrier for them. They've seen that it works for a lot of use cases. And so the convenience that comes with telemedicine outweighs the maybe the things that you feel like you don't get when you're actually in the room with your physician. Versus there are other aspects of healthcare or any industry that may revert back once we're in a post-COVID world. So I think that's just an interesting thing to keep in mind.
You. And Harold, any thoughts to add?
Sure. Yeah, just regarding most challenging, most rewarding things about being an entrepreneur, probably the most challenging is disciplining and firing employees. It really sucks knowing that they rely on you for their income, but for whatever reason they're not performing, or maybe they're not a good cultural fit, and having to fire them has really sucked over the years. And of course, it's always challenging to continuously drive revenue and profit growth, but that just comes with the territory. The most rewarding thing about being an entrepreneur has been building equity in something I own, not really having any ceiling to my compensation or income. It's really something that I'm building over time, and that has value. And being in my industry, which is solar, it feels good to be helping customers go solar and leaving the world a slightly better place with every solar panel we put on. Of course, being in the solar industry has a lot of challenges in regards to policy. Like right now, the California utilities are trying to charge a solar tax. So anybody that wants to put solar in their roof, the California utilities want to charge them like $80, $90 a month just for having solar, which kind of kills the return. And so we've got a lot of policy and regulatory BS to deal with. So that's some of the challenges.
Thank you for that. I wanted to actually ask a follow-up question, more so targeted towards your advanced degree. And I should have asked this earlier, but not too late. As you all have advanced degrees, working with STEM students, I get that question a lot in the sense of, should I be applying to grad school? What type of graduate programs should I be applying to, and so on. Can you talk to us a little bit about your decision in pursuing, be it your MBA or advanced degree, your reasoning behind that, and how has that degree helped you in your professional career? Maybe start with Derek. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I would kind of bucket advanced degrees into two major categories. There's the ones that are required in order for you to pursue a particular career, and then there's the ones that are helpful in helping you pursue a particular career. So for example, like you need to go to med school in order to practice medicine versus like you don't need to get an MBA to do most careers, but oftentimes it's like an accelerator. And so I think the first thing is like having a pretty good sense of where you want to go and then deciding whether or not grad school is necessary in order for you to get there. I know a lot of people that think that because they don't know what they want to do exactly, they choose to go to grad school, they choose to get a law degree, they choose to get their MBA, but then they graduate and they're still very unsure about what they want to do with it, and now they're in debt. And so I think before you apply to any grad program, you should have a very specific answer to like what you're planning on doing with it and why you think you need that to be successful. For me in particular, I wanted to go, I knew I wanted to get some experience at a strategy consulting firm, and the firm that I applied to basically hires exclusively from MBA programs. And so even though like MBAs aren't a required degree for most careers, for this particular thing that I wanted to do, I did need to have that degree. So I don't know, that's just kind of the framing that I would start with, is just like, why do you want it? And do you actually think it's necessary? And like, will you get the ROI from the debt that you may have to take on in order to get that degree?
Thank you for that advice. Anyone else?
Fully echo what Derek says there. And I would say I probably pursued a grad degree for all the wrong reasons. Really pursued it because I was paper chasing, just trying to collect letters after my name, even though it wasn't required at all. Pursued it out of ego. And if I had spent that money, investing it or put it towards my business, I would probably have far more of a return on it. So I think, education, there's so much education that's free, high quality education that's free and available online now. It's not like you need to go to an institution per se to learn something. But if you need to have a certain certification or degree to advance professionally, then that may make sense. But in my case, it probably wasn't the right reason to do it.
Thank you for that. Christine or Jennifer?
I mean, I don't have much to add here. I think Derek nailed it. I guess like from a personal, as a personal anecdote, I think I, again, stress it's really beneficial if you do get some work experience before you go to grad school, because for me, like I went to grad school because I noticed that the industry was getting more medicinal and the types of claims that we wanted for cosmetics. And so I wanted to learn from pharmaceuticals and biotech how they went about achieving the claims and going through their legal processes. And so because I was able to work before going to grad school, I had like a very specific vision in mind, my objective, what I wanted to learn, what professors I wanted to reach out to, what city I wanted it to be in so that I could have a career afterwards that was also targeted in beauty. And so when you do get to work and you kind of build the objectives, or as Derek said, really analyze like, why is it that you want to go to grad school? You can have a real clear mindset of what you hope to achieve out of it. And I think that goes with anything though, like if if you want to invest like that time and money, it's really important to understand what you hope to get at the end goal of it. Otherwise, you could end up wasting your time and money. And grad school is not necessarily a cheap thing unless you get a free ride from your company, which some people get. So that's also awesome. If you get that and you feel like it's for free, why not like do that to network and meet people? That could be a good thing. But again, I think for most people, like you really want to go in there with an objective.
Yeah, I want to preface this by saying that I do not have an advanced degree after my bachelor's of science, but I am planning on getting my MBA further along career route, and the reason being exactly what Derek and Jennifer just said. I received the same advice from the CEO of our company, who is also a professor at a business school. And when I expressed my interest at starting an MBA, he fully told me, not yet. Wait until you get more experience in the field. Wait until you know more in direction where you're going, what you enjoy, what you want to do. And only then would you be able to get the most out of the MBA and the money that you're spending. So it's fully exactly echoes what Derek and Jennifer were saying. So I will say something that Jennifer mentioned was if you get like a free ride from a company, I think that's the reason why my dad got his MBA from U Chicago, was because the engineer he was getting that was going to be paid for him. And I think it was valuable insight for him, but I'm not so sure I would pursue that route rather than having a direction after seeing the outcome of people from both.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your feedback. My final thought question is, what is some advice, or if you were to think back to where you were in undergrad, something that you wish you would have known that you know now, that you would want our undergrad students to know about your career path, about your career journey, where you are today, what would be that advice?
Seize every opportunity that you have in undergrad right now. I know Christina hopped off, but Christina is one of our UCLA's Career Center counselors. I actually went to her. She was my counselor back when I was in undergrad, and she hashed out my resume for me. And oh, there you are. And she hashed out my resume for me, and it's what I used to apply to literally everything besides slight tailoring. And it's what got me basically current dream jobs that I have right now. So seize every opportunity you have. I know you guys are currently in this program, which is already like really proactive of you guys. So great job. But it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all of the opportunities that you have, but just grabbing them, holding on. You can passively absorb. If you're overwhelmed, it's okay. That happens to everyone. But if you find something that interests you, an avenue, connections are, to be honest, one of the easiest ways to get into things that you want to do. So networking, super important. Super, super important.
Thank you. And thank you for promoting Christine in the Career Center. Derek?
I think my advice is going to be very similar to like the idea of building credit. I'd mentioned earlier about doing internships. A lot of companies are in the hiring process, they look for people that have experience. And so in order to get experience, you need to get hired. And the easiest time to be able to do that is as an intern, because it's like lower risk for a company. They're willing to take more of a bet on you because it's time bound. So I think if you're interested in working at like a more typical company, I think getting some internship experience is really important. I think the other piece of advice that I would have, and this is a little bit kind of paradoxical to what I just said, is like also make sure you're enjoying like being in undergrad and like all of the things that come with that. So like if there's something you're really passionate about, make sure you're like making enough time for you to do that, because you don't have that chance very often after you kind of leave the safety of not having to work full time. So make sure you take advantage of that.
Thank you. Jennifer, Harold, JJ.
Yeah, no worries. I think internships are important, but if you haven't been able to secure an internship, or maybe it's not in an internship in a field that you like, I think you can also do side hobbies. Like, I've interviewed many people who had no cosmetic experience whatsoever. Maybe they come from a technical engineering background, never touched consumer goods, but they've presented to me ideations and plans and analyzing data sets of the market. And they're like, this is just what I do in my free time. And this is why I think I can add. So even if you didn't have that internship in an industry or whatnot, taking the opportunity to find other ways to get that experience, whether it's online learning, like you have a lot of tools out there, or creating your own side projects and having the hustle is really important. I would also say learning to tell your story. So what are some unique assets that you can bring to the table? I know I talk to a lot of like young undergrads, and they're like, every time I apply for a job, they say they need like 1 to 2 years experience or previous job experience. But obviously I'm in school and sometimes I didn't have the opportunity to do that. With that said, I think you can kind of circumvent some of those obstacles by really learning how to sell yourself, right? Like, why should they hire you? And that goes from not just starting a job, but going from one job to another job to another job. You can definitely pivot, but you have to learn how to tell your story. So like, what is your unique selling point that you can give to your employers? Like, why should they pick you? Why are you, maybe you want to pivot from your technical degree or something and you want to go into marketing. How can you like bridge that gap where you can say, you know, I studied physics and chemistry and biology, but here are some of the clubs that I joined and I learned a lot about marketing and business, and this is why you should hire me. So like, learning how to tell your story, how to connect the dots is also really important.
So advice for students that are graduating and thinking about, what to do next, I would say, just remember that not all of life is about academics or your job or profession. You've basically got the rest of your life to work, and you'll probably work until you're going to die. So, when you're young, it's the time, and you're young, you got no responsibilities, nobody to take care of except yourself. It's an opportunity and a really unique time in life to travel, to do any of the dream bucket list things. Because once you get into a job, especially any kind of demanding or job with, like where you're responsible for a team or other people, you're just never going to have the same kind of freedoms that you do in life like you do right now. So, work will always be there. Just remember, it's not all about the books or academics. You got to learn and know how to connect with people, how to tell a story, like Jennifer said, like your own personal story. So remember those soft skills as well.
Thank you so much. At this point, I wanted to go ahead and thank our panelists for being here this evening. I do want to open it for Q&A for our students to ask some questions as well and transition into networking. But at this point, I'm going to stop the recording and thank our panelists for being here this evening.